Hi, everyone. Hello again. It's Gordon Causey. Today is now the 7th of February. It's Thursday, February 7th, 2024. Candy's here. I'm going to give her another treat. Come on up. Come on. Come here. All right. Shake a paw. Shake a paw. Lay down. Speak. 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 Come on. She's in good voice. I'll let her chew away. I see I have someone watching. Live chat is on. I have an idea. I don't know how realistic it is. I tend to think it's somewhat realistic about how to a humanitarian solution to the tragedy that's unfolding in Gaza. You read about it every day. It's on the news constantly. I think we're up around 28,000 residents in Gaza having been killed, many women and children. Some of them undoubtedly are Hamas and other militant groups affiliated with Hamas. No doubt some of those casualties are their militants, but I think it's reasonable to say that the overwhelming majority of them are likely the civilian population, and again, many women and children. And that's a humanitarian tragedy. Everyone knows, the story, but I think it bears repeating. This conflict is the result of an attack on October 7th. Whether you think that the attack when Hamas launched thousands of rockets, broke through the security fence and indiscriminately killed men, women, and children, kidnapped even infants, brought them back into Gaza. And it's believed there are still hostages alive, Israeli hostages alive in Gaza. Many have been either killed or died. But what is the solution to it? And I think the solution, we have the immovable object against the irresistible force. We have Hamas with their slogan of "from the river to the sea." They want Israel wiped off the map from the river to the sea, and that's they want it to be Palestine. They want to resurrect. I guess that was the name. The territory was given during the British Mandate period. I've said this many times. I mean, the British started ruling the area toward the end. Before the war ended, Britain gained control of it, and then after as the war was ending and after it ended, Britain was administering the territory, and the administration of this area, of pretty much of the whole Middle East, they brought in this mandate system where the French were mandated territories and the British were mandated territories. The British had the mandate for Palestine, they had the mandate for Mesopotamia, and they started carving and making countries. Out of their mandate for Palestine, they created Jordan. Out of their mandate for Mesopotamia, they created the country Iraq. The French mandate for Syria created Syria and also Lebanon. And this was the mandate system. The only thing is, all these countries got created, but they couldn't solve the problem. One part of the Palestinian mandate remained from 1921 until 1948. And then Britain abandoned it. They tapped out and put an expiration date on their mandate. But again, and then a war ensued, a nearly year-long war from May 15th, 1948 until sometime in March of 1949. I don't think there's a definitive date for when that war ended, because Israel was at war with 5 countries, and they signed, in March of 1949, they signed armistice peace agreements with the 5 nations they were at war with. They signed armistice agreements with Egypt and Jordan and Saudi Arabia and Syria and Lebanon. and then peace was established and green line borders. But that war ended, but it never really ended because there's a significant portion of the Arab world that refuses to accept Israel's right to exist, and they want it wiped off the map. And now we have this situation in Gaza, and where my sympathies lie is with the civilian population of both Israel and Gaza. Human beings deserve to live in peace and security, regardless of their religion, nationality, ethnic status, ethnic group. Everyone deserves to live in peace and security, but that's impossible right now. And so what I think a humanitarian solution would be, it would involve a ceasefire so that the civilian population of Gaza could be evacuated. They could become refugees and I would welcome Canada accepting Palestinian refugees from Gaza, Gazan refugees, especially the women and children. I've mentioned this before in a previous video. Obviously, you'd want vetting, you'd want background checks, you'd want to ensure that the individuals coming into Canada, that they have no attachment to groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Islamic Jihad, or other militant Islamic groups. But, women and children, get them out of harm's way. And those residents of Gaza who are affiliated with Hamas and the Islamic Jihad and these other groups that are bent on destroying Israel, they can stay and let them fight. Let them have at it. Let's do 1948, 1949 all over again. I mean, there was that war. There was the 1967 so-called Six-Day War. There was the 1973 war, sometimes called the Six-Day War, or rather the Yom Kippur War, 1973. Israel was attacked on the holiest day on the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Surprise attack. So this seems to me, when you have belligerent forces, Israel is bound and determined to that it has the right to exist, and other groups and nations and militants are bound and determined that Israel should not exist. So leave the fighting to the belligerents. And right now, with the fight centering on Gaza, get the civilian population out of Gaza. Canada can take some, Europe can take some, Britain can take some. Britain is Europe, but they don't think so. South American countries, it's a big planet. There are 2 million odd people living in Gaza. Get the civilian population out. Have a ceasefire. Maybe even involve an international force. The what do they call them? The Blue Berets, a UN-style force. Go in and enforce a ceasefire while the civilian population is evacuated, so that women and children aren't being killed every day. And then it's militants against militants. And Hamas and the allies of Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen, the Hezbollah in Lebanon, and I believe they also have Hezbollah might even have a bigger reach than just Lebanon. They might be in Syria as well, but then there's Islamic Jihad, and there are other groups who all are bent on destroying Israel, wiping it off the map and replacing it, and then just leave it there. Let them go. Because right now, things are escalating beyond Gaza. Now we have the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden off the coast of Yemen, where ships are being attacked. We now have these drone attacks happening on U.S. forces. We have the U.S. responding to Iranian-backed groups in Syria, in Iraq, and things are threatening to escalate. Get the civilians out, welcome the stranger. Hopefully, some in the Arab world would welcome this. Concerned about the daily body count, concerned about that, would want to provide a refuge, provide a haven for the women and children, especially of Gaza, and would welcome them into countries, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria, the Emirate states, Iran, Iraq. Get the civilians out of harm's way. And I think if Israel would propose something like that, it would be very telling as to whether or not Hamas would agree to it. Hamas says that they don't hide behind the civilian population. Well, here. And some believe them, some don't. I don't. I don't believe them. I believe they do hide behind their civilian population. But this would put that assertion that they don't, it would put it to the test. Because would they allow, would they agree to their civilian population being evacuated? So that, because it has to be remembered that on after the attack of October 7th, Hamas's senior leadership, their leadership said, this is just a rehearsal. Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. And there's a lot of ignorance about the geography. People don't know what the river is. They think it's the Euphrates or the Nile, or goodness knows, probably some think it's even the Amazon. It's the Jordan River. And the sea is the Mediterranean Sea. So basically, by saying from the river to the sea, they're saying all of Israel gone, replaced by a new nation state that might be called Palestine, maybe, or who knows, maybe they just carve it up and Egypt would take some, and Syria would take some, and Lebanon would take some, and Jordan would take some. They'd all grab a part, or maybe they'd go to war over it, amongst themselves. I mean, in Yemen, they've had a 10-year-long civil war going on between these Houthis and the Saudi-backed royal family that had been ruling before that civil war broke out. And in that war, 400,000 over the past 10 years, 400,000 Yemenis, many women and children, have been killed, a lot of them by starvation or simply because they lack access to even basic medical care. No one cares about that because it's not on the news, and who cares if Yemeni women and children are dying of starvation and attacks and all this, because I don't know. I mean, it makes no sense to me why a death of 400,000 Yemenis is ignored, and the death of, I think we're coming up to 30,000 Gazans. Well, that's a tragedy, and we completely ignore the 400,000 Yemenis who have been killed and have died. But that's our world. That's the world we live in. Short attention span. We only worry about that which we are programmed to worry about, and if it's not on the nightly news, if it's not being talked about in social media, if people aren't doing TikTok videos on it, then it doesn't exist. Same with same with the conflict that's still ongoing in Syria. It's not on the news anymore, so it doesn't exist. It's not real. Gaza is the only place that where human tragedy is unfolding. Well, I wonder how many of those who wave the Palestinian flag and support the Palestinian cause in Canada would welcome Gazans as refugees in this country. And then after everything's said and done, if Hamas and the Houthis and the Hezbollah, if they succeed in their objective of wiping Israel off the map, of freeing Palestine from the river to the sea, then after Israel's defeated, then the Gazans could return. They could be given temporary resident status in other countries in the world, and if Israel wins, well, they win, and the spoils of war. That's just been all of human history. Certainly been all of the history of this contentious piece of real estate. So that's my proposal. That's my idea. That's what I think is a humanitarian solution to this problem, to provide refuge to the civilian population of Gaza, so that the militant forces the Gazans' militant forces, be it Hamas, Islamic Jihad, or whatever name they have, and the Israeli Defense Forces that are fully assert the right of Israel to exist. We have two competing ideologies that are diametrically opposed to one another, so let them go. Let them fight and get the innocent population out of the equation, out of the situation. Get them to a haven, to someplace safe. Give them refuge. And as I say, I supported it when Canada brought in, I think we brought in 25,000 Syrian refugees out of humanitarianism, get them out of harm's way over the destabilized situation with the Islamic State in Syria and everything that was going on there. I'll give you a bit of background. The West is created this problem in many respects, maybe even in every respect. Bashir al-Assad is the dictator ruler of Syria, and both the Americans and the Russians had come to Bashir al-Assad with two competing proposals for a natural gas pipeline. And the Americans wanted the pipeline, this proposed natural gas pipeline, to transit through Turkey, because Turkey is a NATO country and a US ally. The Russians, they wanted a proposed natural gas pipeline to transit through Iran, because that is their ally. So Bashir al-Assad had to choose between one or the other. And ultimately, this was under the Obama administration. And ultimately, he chose the Russian proposal. That was the pipeline deal he signed on to. And in the wake of that, the United States of America began funding, training, arming insurgent groups in Syria because they wanted to topple the regime of Bashir al-Assad. They wanted to get someone in power in Syria who would pick their pipeline deal. And so with the U.S. backing these militant groups that were trying to topple the Bashir al-Assad regime, Assad had to devote his military and security forces towards quelling or putting down this insurrection, this American-backed insurrection. And so all of his security forces, armed forces and such, were bogged down with this internal conflict. And into that void stepped ISIS, Islamic State. And this is a creation of the West. And so much of everything that's gone on for the past, the reason the Middle East is such a mess is because after World War I, what happened? This mandate system. The Sykes-Picot Agreement, France and Britain carving up the Middle East and creating artificial countries and stealing, land from one group to give it to another. I mean, the Hashemite dynasty, they were, it's a ruling family, and they stole part of the Palestinian Mandate and created Jordan. Then they stole part of the Mesopotamian Mandate, the British Mandate for Mesopotamia, and the Hashemites were given rule over both at the beginning Transjordan, Jordan, and they were given Iraq to rule as well. Even though they're from Saudi Arabia, even though they're Arabian, they were given stolen Palestinian land, stolen Mesopotamian land. You had all these countries created. There's groups like the Kurds who were a majority population within a Kurdish territory, if you will, but then part of that territory was given to Iraq, part of that territory was given to Syria. It was split. And so the Kurdish people, basically, there should have been a Kurdistan, but none was created. And so instead of being the majority population in their own area, they became the minority population in 3 or 4 different countries, artificial countries that the US, or rather Britain and France, basically invented. And so get the people of Gaza, get the civilian population, get the women and children to a safe haven or safe havens, keep families together, bring them to Canada, the United States, South America, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Western developed countries, hopefully the Arab world. But just because the Arab world won't do it, and I suspect they wouldn't, I suspect they'd say no. But just because they're not willing to do the humanitarian thing doesn't mean that the Western world shouldn't do the humanitarian thing. We've got to be better than that and give refuge to the women, and in particular the women and children of the Gaza Strip, and give them a safe place, and then let the militants, do what militants do. Anyway, thanks for watching. And the usual. You can like it, you can subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Thanks. God bless.